10 is rebuilding after natural disaster, lesson learned from Aceh tsunami and Yogyakarta earthquake, two process that I and several other friends follows. So let me begin remind you about this event. The first one is Aceh tsunami, happened in 26th of December 2004. Number of people death is about 167,000 people, around 500,000 displaced, loss of about 100,000 houses, and 2,000 school buildings destroyed. It's a massive disaster that affected a very large area. And second disaster that I'm going to compare is a situation, an earthquake happening in 27 May 2008 in Yogyakarta. The death toll is much less, it's about 6,000 people, 37,000 injured, 1 million people homeless, loss of houses for about 150,000, and about also 2,000 school buildings destroyed. So what I'm going to summarize are several issues during the rebuilding after this event. So it's not part of the relief period, which is typically happening in the first 2 months, but after that, which is the rebuilding, the reconstruction, what are the issues that come out from these two activities? The first issue, certainly the goal of rebuilding in both activities is building better. We would like to build the society better. But there are two issues. One is on the issue of master plan. Who is going to make the master plan for these activities? In the case of Aceh, it initially is a top-down approach. The national agency do that. But because of conflict, resistance from local people, lack of ownership from local government, and it seems there will be more difficult exit strategy later on. The implementation is much more relaxed, meaning allowing a bottom-up process to fit in as well. In Yogyakarta, it's relatively bottom-up, so it's much more relaxed planning. And these two is actually could affect. One is the starting of the rebuilding process. The master plan took about 5 months. The discussion on the master plan turned out took a lot of time, while the bottom-up approach is much more relaxed, is happening, making the process quite quick. The second differences between Aceh and Jogja are in Aceh, the central government basically took the coordination of the activities. They basically coordinate and later on becoming a developer. The reason for that is because there is a lack of solid local government and conflict, issue of accountability, victim, but then they become a victim of dissatisfaction. While Yogyakarta, the process was took by local government, only involved in coordination, in which, in that case, they are much more safe in terms of receiving critics or becoming a victim of dissatisfaction. Now, the next issue that coming during the process is on sequence of rebuilding. In Aceh, the sequence is following that graph, which is in early periods, strong emphasis on building housing. Rebuilding livelihood was pushed 2 years after the event. While in Jogja, livelihood recovery was conducted at the same time as building houses. And the impact you can see within a year, 80% of enterprises in Bantul, which is the area mostly affected, has resumed their operation. And so far, I think this is an important issue to conduct research about ability of the society to rebound their livelihood after an emergency that they can. We don't really, for Indonesian's case, I don't really understand, why it's happening so fast in Jogja. while in Aceh it's not that. So it could be because of this sequence, but it could be because of other. So the implication is actually what happened in Aceh is longer stay in temporary shelter, cost increase, and also delaying the process of livelihood recovery, while in Jogja, staying in shelter relatively short, and as I mentioned, livelihood quickly recover. Now, the third issue is on input prices and management. Lower local supplies, higher demand on material and labor, as well as on large influx of money, increase the cost of living, housing, and infrastructure. Paul has mentioned that opening up the economy, reducing a barrier, both monetary and physical, is important. That was happening in Aceh actually. Indonesia was able to conduct a special regulation on material import, and what is important also in Aceh is, which is actually could be the main barrier of this moving goods and services, is the conflict at the time, but the government was being able to establish conflict, and so allowing massive movement of goods and labor from neighboring region, which is actually North Sumatra. Now, what is I think is important in Yogyakarta, not only they allow this movement of people and goods happening, but domestic provision of material is part of recovery livelihood activities. So at the time, 6 months after the earthquake, you can see that many households develop brick factories and wood building materials. So they basically helping with one policy but attacking two issues. And the other thing that important in terms of this managing this input price is the flexibility of donor in adjusting their cost estimate and support. And those actually happening in Aceh and Jogja. Now, there's an issue on delivering aid, whether you would like to give cash or in kind. And in Aceh, mostly are in kind, meaning that people receiving houses or boats, while in Yogyakarta, mostly they receive money. There has been a debate on that, whether, which one is actually should be done during the recovery. Well, on one hand, if you give in kind, certainly that there will be houses were built, boats will be provided. And if in cash, there is an uncertainty on the use of the cash, whether people is actually building houses or not. The first one, relatively protected from price fluctuation. Second one, people has to basically bear the burden of price fluctuation. But the problem with giving in kind, there is time delay in receiving support, while cash is very fast. Basically, within 8 months after the earthquake in Jogja, almost everybody already received. They give into several parts. The first part they already received the cash. And the other thing is that in Aceh there has been an issue of dissatisfaction on the quality of boat and house that they receive. While if you give cash, you don't have those issues. So this was a debate that might want to look more carefully whether we would like to give cash or in kind in supporting recovery. Now the next issue is managing expectation. High expectation, typically because announcement that we are going to build better, ambitious plan, schedule that we are going to build this amount of houses, and arrival of large scale of support is actually create high expectation of the people. And high expectation of the people can easily make dissatisfaction. If you got a dissatisfaction, create social unrest, and at the end, it will unsmooth the process of rebuilding. So it is important to manage the expectation of the people during this rebuilding. You can always warn the people that
your time, Pak Budy.
Yeah, reconstruction takes time, socialization of variation of quality, and also improving living condition during the shelter. Now, finally, there's the last issue. The last two issues is on donor commitment and exit strategy. On donor commitment, based on Aceh case and Yogyakarta case, commitment may not realized in a timely manner. It could be late, it could be not in the right time, but what is more worse is that may not translate into actual flow of funds. Could be only a promise, but never happening. And the amount, then there's an issue also, the amount spent on the ground versus for donors on administration. Yeah, that's something. So what is important on managing this donor commitment? Certainly, number one is domestic capacity to absorb aid, and number two is effective communication with donors. And finally, on the issue of exit strategy, no exit strategy certainly can lead to a big shock to the local economy, a sudden huge responsibility to local government. So it is important to have a gradual exit and involvement of local people since the beginning of rebuilding. Certainly after rebuilding, we would like to have better livelihood, new infrastructure, better houses, and new school for the kids. Thank you.